thirsty for affirmation and irrationally defensive of the status quo. I never met a rule I didn't like. And I was prepared to grow up and behave better than any girl had ever behaved, which was my version of ambition. Ironically, it was the women who chipped away at my template. Isn't it always the women? First, there was Miss Prissy, aptly named and worthy of her moniker. Where my mom and the rest were practical and modest, Miss Prissy dressed head to toe in leopard print and let us know in no uncertain terms she planned to become well acquainted with plastic surgery. No, she was not going to go gently into that good night. She kept her outrageous jewelry in a double-decker tackle box and gave us all nicknames we use to this living day. Miss Prissy was supermodel gorgeous and obscenely stylish. She blew my mind. My sisters and I couldn't get enough of her. She was wild when everyone else was proper, and she took up more space than I thought women were allotted. I assumed she was just a one-off, but her specific sense of self, with no apologies, challenged my tidy categories. Later, it was the lady deacons at our first church out of college. Unbeknownst to us, my husband Brandon and I had accidentally joined forces with the liberal Baptists, which our conservative Oklahoma compatriots let us know right quick. They were as exotic to me as snake handlers. I was actually scared to tell my parents, lest they assume we had, as my friend Alex's father said when he slid over from Catholicism, lost the faith. The lady deacons didn't just pass the offering plates. They were in leadership and the pulpit and at all the meetings. They helped steer the ship. There are no words to describe this revelation. I literally had no idea this was possible. I remember watching a woman preach, practical and modest in the way I understood, but also carefully dissecting a complicated bit of scripture. I looked around like, oh my word, these folks are taking her seriously and no one is going up in flames. And I am so happy my parents aren't visiting this weekend. Her spiritual authority rubbed against 2 decades of internalized patriarchy, and I couldn't decide if she was my enemy or my hero. While later, as I was coming into some sense of my own mind and my internal wiring was threatening to become a problem in both personality and function, it was Anne Lamott who shocked me anew. A close friend, more aware than I was of my own shifting North Star, put her book, Traveling Mercies, in my hands, and the lights flickered on, then blazed to life. Not once, not even close to once, had I ever heard a woman, author, Christian, talk like that. And it wasn't just her saucy conversion story where she compared Jesus to a stray cat who wouldn't leave her alone until she finally cursed and said, I quit. All right, you can come in. But she offered such naked truth-telling, so little self-protection, 0 rules followed. Anne existed in a world I'd never even heard of. I had no access to a community that allowed this type of faith. I didn't know a woman could write like that, think like that, much less succeed like that. I had no idea who was giving her this permission. Why wasn't she getting in trouble? More recently, it was the women of the world who shifted my perspective. Specifically, the women of Ethiopia, more to the point, my adopted son, Ben's mom. Sintayu is a marvel. After Ben and Remy were with us a couple of years, Brandon went back to Ethiopia to work with our partners there, and I told him, we have to find Ben's mom. Pause. And by we, I mean you. It's just one woman in a country. Go with God. And he did. And we discovered a story full of abuse and betrayal and pain and loss, as all adoption stories begin with sorrow. But this smart, resourceful survivor who once lived at the mercy of dishonorable men went on to graduate